Welcome to the Altruistic Libertarian, advocate for a genuinely free society. I'm Anthony Wheeler, and today we begin a case study of our deadly highways, followed by a potential solution. We have already taken a close look at two forms of government intervention, inflation in the business cycle in episodes 10 and 11, and AT&T in episodes 13 and 14. We will now delve into a topic that few people even consider, our deadly ground transportation system. September 3rd, 1999. It all started with dense fog on a stretch of road known as Carnage Alley, due to the number, severity, and regular fatal auto accidents that occurred there. No fog warnings had been issued. A tractor-trailer suddenly slowed down as visibility reduced to 3 feet, and the tractor-trailer behind him jackknifed. After that, cars careened into the stopped vehicles for several minutes, adding to the mayhem. Crashes occurred going both directions. People were struck and injured as they attempted to flee. The fire at the center of the 87-car pileup was so intense, cars fused together, leaving the charred remains of their drivers. In the end, 8 were dead and 45 injured. In addition to the fog, the perfectly straight road was also seen to blame, as it was suspected of causing highway hypnosis and driver fatigue. But this tragedy wasn't caused by fog or driver fatigue. It was caused by an inherently dangerous highway system. Of course, terrible weather conditions will kill people while driving, and they will continue to do so until something is changed. While you can't change the weather, you can certainly change how people get from one place to another, eliminating so many unnecessary deaths and injuries. December 31, 1998. The roads were already covered with ice when snow began falling, dropping visibility to near zero. Inevitably, one car ran into another, and then another, and then another, until almost 100 cars had piled up along I-75, killing one person and seriously injuring another 39. The highway was closed for several hours as the injured were transported to local hospitals. High speed, ice-slick roads, and low visibility on the highways equates to killed and injured people, mass destruction, and the breaking of the local transportation system. All symptoms of a failed, dangerous, and ineffective way to get people from one place to another. October 25, 1995. What happens when one high-speed ground system intersects with another high-speed ground system? That is, when surface roads cross rail lines. Well, inevitably, on rare occasions, the two meet with tragic results. In one particular case, a school bus loaded with children was stopped at a traffic light, one designed to clear traffic if a train was approaching on the tracks. However, about 3 feet of the bus was extended into the path of the train when the crossing signal descended. The kids thought that was funny and were joking about it until they saw the train bearing down upon them. They started to scream for the bus driver to go, to get out of the way of the train. But even as the light turned green, allowing her to move off the tracks, she was occupied by the commotion, not understanding the situation. The train hit the stationary bus going 60 miles an hour, separating the body from the chassis, launching the screaming kids into the intersection. The impact killed 7 youngsters and seriously injured 21. The bus driver was blamed for poor judgment. The design of the intersection was blamed for the tragedy. The timing of the signals were blamed. But in the end, the inherent design of the system was to blame. All the incremental improvements possible will never eliminate the lethal potential of the current ground transportation system. July 31, 1991. On our highways and roads, for people to travel safely from one place to another, several things have to go right during the entire trip. All drivers need to exhibit good judgment. Roads need to remain clear of obstacles, snow and ice. All the vehicles need to function properly. All these conditions need to maintain all of the time. On one particular day, a school bus carrying a bunch of Girl Scouts was driving down a narrow mountain road when something went horribly wrong. The bus began to pick up speed, and the driver honking in panic as he passed a van just before encountering a sharp corner. Unable to slow down or negotiate the turn, the bus crashed through the guardrail and plunged over the side of the embankment, flinging the girls all about. The body of the bus separated from the chassis, coming to rest upside down among the boulders, the front crushed. 7 were killed and 53 injured, 13 of them critically. Brake failure was identified as the cause of the accident. Given the impossibility of guaranteeing the perfect functioning of every critical system in the millions of vehicles traveling the highways, such failure is guaranteed to occur again and again. Most times such system failures result in little more than a scare, a sudden injection of adrenaline. Like the time when my brakes failed. Person braked in front of me, we're going pretty fast, and I couldn't slow down. Fortunately, he noticed my distress and kept going, missing his turn and preventing me from hitting him at high speed. On rare occasions, though, system failures inevitably kill and maim. December 11, 1990. She was the lucky one, and smart as well. Able to stop in time, surrounded by enveloping fog, she got out of her car and moved safely away. As she scrambled up a bank, she heard a terrible screech as a tractor-trailer rammed into her car, smashing it into the car ahead of it, killing both passengers who were still inside. And still cars and trucks plowed into each other, and in minutes, 99 vehicles turned themselves into scrap metal. 12 people dead, 42 seriously injured. It took several days to clean up. A huge section of I-75 had to be rebuilt. The solution? Fog detection systems and warning signs. But it doesn't matter. If you are forced to drive in severe fog, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you drive slow enough to prevent hitting a stopped vehicle in front of you, some asshole driving too fast is liable to hit you from behind. And if you drive fast enough, you are the asshole. The solution is a transportation system that doesn't kill people in fog, snow, or ice. May 14, 1988. It was an old school bus, used now by the local church. Full of kids in the youth group on their way home from an amusement park, the bus was struck head-on by a Toyota pickup truck that had crossed the center divide. The 34-year-old driver of the pickup had been drinking, a cold 12-pack at his feet, several cans already consumed. Remarkably, nobody was seriously injured during the initial impact. But the front door of the bus was jammed closed, and a suspension spring had been driven back into the gas tank of the bus. Leaking gasoline ignited. The driver attempted to put out the fire. Most of the kids rushed to the exit in the back, sometimes jamming up the aisle until no one could move. A large cooler near the back exacerbated the jam. Some of the older boys tried to kick out windows, without success. One adult woman, the only adult out of 4 to escape alive, squeezed her tiny figure out of a window near the front. As she lay on the ground, she saw flames coming out of the window. At the back of the bus, the kids formed such a crush that a passerby had to pull them forcibly out of the door and onto the ground. But within minutes, the flammable seats ignited, raising the temperature to almost 2,000 degrees, creating flash fire conditions. Of the 67 people originally on the bus, 27 were still aboard when the temperature soared, killing them all. Another 34 were seriously injured. In response to the fatal accident, school bus standards were revised, including an increase in emergency exits, use of less flammable fuel, that is diesel, and strengthened structural integrity. Memorials and flowers are regularly placed at the site of the accident. The approximate cause of the accident was driving while under the influence. The root cause is operating a high-speed transportation system that allows drunk drivers in the first place. January 19, 1983. Imagine you are waiting patiently for your turn to enter the turnpike. Your 2 young boys, ages 5 and 10, roughhousing in the back seat. As you approach the toll booth to obtain your ticket, you glance in your rearview mirror and see bearing down on you a tractor trailer that seems unable to stop. There is nothing you can do before your car is struck violently from behind as a huge truck plows into 4 cars, smashing your car forward through the toll booth. Lucky that, as it spares you the flames. The tractor trailer explodes, spewing half-cooked sweet potatoes across the plaza. The fire happens so fast, the people trapped in the first 3 cars never get out. It will take dental records to identify the bodies. Your youngest boy escapes with minor injuries, but your oldest ends up on life support. They are keeping his body alive so that his organs can be used by somebody else. In total, 6 are dead and 4 injured. Apparently, the brakes failed on the tractor trailer, preventing the driver from slowing before reaching the toll booth. Another needless, terrible tragedy that destroyed so many lives. How many more decades are we going to live with this? Almost 12 million traffic accidents occur every year in this country, killing an average of more than 44,000 people. In total, 3.6 million people have died on the highways in this country alone. To put that into perspective, that would be equivalent to destroying the second largest city in the United States and killing every person in it, as if Los Angeles was nuked off the map. That's more than 4 times as many people killed in all the wars in U.S. history. Except these aren't trained soldiers, men who deliberately put their lives at risk, who are trained to defend themselves, who go into a fight knowing the dangers. This is 3.6 million men, women, and children, all private citizens, all innocent, all dead since 1900. This is a mother driving to the local store to get milk for her children. This is a newly married couple killed in a head-on collision coming back from a romantic dinner. This is a busload of children dumped into the local river after the driver suffers a heart attack. This is 2 teenagers racing their cars and one of them losing control and hitting a tree. Does anyone truly understand the magnitude of this national disaster? A few thousand people die on 9/11 and the country rises up in arms and destroys another country. More Americans die every month on the highways and no one raises their voice. 12 students get shot at Columbine High School, and the country goes into mourning when that many people will die in Denver on the highways in just so many months. 4 students at Ohio State are gunned down by the National Guard, and we write enduring music to remember. As for the rest of the world, in 2010 alone, 1,240,000 people lost their lives on the world's roads, compared to a total of 440,000 murdered or killed in war that year. And the worst part? The victims of the highways are typically innocent women, men, and children, completely undeserving of their fate. Why do we allow this ongoing tragedy? Why do we accept this self-inflicted genocide? Why hasn't anyone questioned the underlying causes for this senseless slaughter? Why the silence? Why the indifference? Here's how Milan Kundera poses the question and answers it. Quote, I also think of those daily slaughters along the highways, of that death that is as horrible as it is banal, and that bears no resemblance to cancer or AIDS because, as the work not of nature but of man, it is almost voluntary death. How can it be that such a death fails to dumbfound us, to turn our lives upside down, to incite us to vast reforms? No, it does not dumbfound us, because we have a poor sense of the real, and in the surreal sphere of symbols, this death in the guise of a handsome car actually represents life. This smiling death is confused with modernity, freedom, adventure. The death of a man condemned to capital punishment, though infinitely rarer, much more readily draws our attention, rouses passions. Confounded with the image of the executioner, it has a symbolic voltage that is far stronger, far darker, and more repellent. Unquote. Many people would assert that driving is simply dangerous, an unavoidable cost from getting from one place to another. Yet it is 20 times safer to travel by train than to drive, on a per passenger mile basis. It is 40 times safer to fly. Not 20%, not 100%, it is 4,000% safer to fly than to drive. Others would argue that we haven't any choice, unless we want to revert to horses or steam engines. But the simple ugly truth? None of this had to be. A transportation system based on privately owned automobiles careening along unsafe highways at high speed is an aberration, a distortion of what a safe and cost-effective transportation system could have been had it evolved within a genuinely free society. You can never predict what the involvement of the government, the application of physical force, will do to a society. In the case of highways, it has wrought terrible harm despite generally good intentions. To make things more difficult, the danger of automobiles came about gradually, and like the frog stuck in a pot of cold water hanging over a fire, we didn't realize how badly boiled we were going to get. You can see in the graph that the gradual rise in highway fatalities between 1900 and say 1928, when the numbers broached 30,000. The highways are a subtle problem, insidious even. It is difficult to criticize them because the highway system has become embedded in our time and our culture. But the fact is, a highway system built around the operation of private motor vehicles is but one possible way to provide transportation. Only one technical solution for moving people and their things from one place to another. There are many other alternatives. The reason that these alternatives have not been developed or implemented on a wider scale, or not at all, is due to the pervasive government intervention. When evaluating the transportation system, we might consider the following criteria most important. How long does it take to get from one place to another? What does it cost? How safe is it? I would assert that ground transportation in the U.S. hasn't improved significantly in any of these categories in many decades. Speed limits haven't changed since the mid-60s, when the national highway system was completed, other than to decline during rush hour in many cities and to be reduced to 50 miles per hour for so many years. The cost to drive has hardly changed, with better gas mileage balanced with increased gas prices. Insurance must be about the same, and the cost of vehicles remains stable, more or less. As for safety, the mandatory use of safety belts and the deployment of airbags has certainly helped, as annual fatalities have steadily declined since the late 60s. This is probably understated, as the number of miles driven has certainly risen, meaning that driving must be safer now than it was at the peak of highway fatalities, even if traffic injuries remain unacceptably high. In other words, progress has been incremental at best, with little improvement in speed and cost, and the cost in human lives remaining far too high. Well, this concludes our show for today. In the next episode, we continue our case study of the deadly highways. Until then, peace.